Now I'd like to call on Australia's Chief Scientist, Dr. Alan Finkel, who is an immediate past president of ATSI and the architect of the STELR program way back when. Thank you,
Peter. Which gives me a little bit of an excuse to go over some of the history of STELR, if I might. It was conceived in 2006. I think of it as being gestated in 2007 and born in 2008. So in those 9 years, as you know, it's just grown and grown, and now it's in, you call it 500, I like to think of that as more than 20% of secondary schools. It's probably more than 25% or even 30% of addressable secondary schools, because not every secondary school it's going to be appropriate for. So 2 questions that spring to mind. The first one is, what were the circumstances of its conception, and what is the secret of its success? So back in 2006, there was already strong awareness that participation rates in Year 12 science were just going down, down, down. And it was a steady decline, and not enough students were choosing the sciences and engineering. And so ATSI, the Academy of Technology and Engineering, it was concerned. And I remember joining a committee of about 5 or 6 fellows who were sitting around a table, flicking through a pile of documents about this thick, which was a little summary per page of each of the extracurricular activities that were available around Australia. And they were actually looking to think about what could they do, you know, the 201st extracurricular activity. But I was a new kid on the block, and when you're new, you always look at things differently. And so, you know, I said, look, if we haven't stopped the decline with 200 programs, what is an extra program going to do? So in their true management style, they sort of said, well, you know, smarty pants, what would you do? So I spent a frenzied weekend doing internet searching and thinking and talking to a few people. And I decided that whatever we did as a national academy, we had to deliver something that was national in scope. And equally, if not more important, it had to be in curriculum rather than extracurricular. So the only voluntary step is the school saying, we volunteer as a school, but then all the kids at the time was only for Year 9, all the kids in a particular year level would then do that program. And we chose at the time Years 9 and 10 as the sweet spot for trying to capture the interests of kids before they had to make what ultimately becomes career-defining decisions going into Year 11 and 12. If, of course, universities still had prerequisites, which they don't, but they should. But that was a political comment, so strike that from the record. So that gave us the scope of what we wanted to do, but what was the value proposition? Ideally, the unique value proposition of what we were trying to do. And the clue, Peter's already given it away, it's in the R in STELR. R stands for relevance. It's incredibly obvious, but it's not always used. And by relevance, we're really saying set the context first, get the kids interested in what it's all about before teaching the theory, which, as I said, is very obvious, but not all that often used. So that gave us the value proposition, but it's not enough. You still have to get everything else right to make a successful program. So we worked hard to incorporate the modern principles, inquiry-based learning, having the students work collaboratively in teams, and have motivational themes with each of the activities. But even that's not enough, because we didn't want to just teach the students how to learn. We wanted to make sure that there was deep science, deep discipline knowledge conveyed through the STELR program. In STELR, I can say the science, when it is delivered after the context, is always serious science. It's never shallow. And it's important. I think that you lose kids if you give them what I refer to as gee whiz science. You know, gosh, there's a spark, isn't that exciting? And you don't capitalise on that to teach them something. They're sponges, they want to learn. In particular, I think that for young people, or you know, anybody entering the workforce, to be effective, you actually have to have deep discipline knowledge. There's a sort of a tendency to think you just need to know how to learn, how to think, how to work collaboratively. You need the deep discipline knowledge as well, so we're trying to do it all. We also made the decision to provide hands-on equipment so that we're getting as far away from online learning in a sense as you can, because they get plenty of that. They need the balance of using their hands and building and maybe even breaking things. Bernard? was recruited with the specific purpose of making bomb-proof equipment, and he's done that very, very well. Importantly, our relationship is with the teachers, not with the students. So ATSI doesn't deliver things direct to the students. The teachers are central to everything that goes on. I've got to say that with the possible exception of parents, no one is more important to the inspiration and education of people, of young kids, than the teachers. But the reality is that teaching science is difficult for some of our teachers because some of them are being asked to teach in areas that they actually haven't been trained in, and some of them are working in areas for which they've been years and years away from when they learnt about that field. So we take it upon ourselves through the STELR program to provide a lot of resources to the teachers, but at the end of the day, it's absolutely up to them. They're responsible for choosing which activities to assign to the students, for answering the student questions, which is not easy in inquiry-based learning, and for responding to the student submissions. So I started it off, but still would not have been possible without the contribution of a large number of people. Standing over there is Peter Pentland, who was there, you know, just after the Big Bang. He was right there helping and has been part of it from the very beginning. Peter, I salute you and thank you. Let's clap Peter. He never gets real accolades. It's good for him. Penny Stoyles, who's been the program. Penny, up the back, you came in, what, about 3 or 4 years ago? I'm exaggerating, 1.5. But Penny, you've been fantastic. You've allowed Peter to diversify what he's doing, and I only hear good things back from the field about you. Jenny Sharwood was the original person who we employed to do the actual hard work of writing the curriculum based on the concepts that we delivered, and she did a wonderful job. Of course, it would not have been possible without Margaret Hartley, the CEO of ATSI, providing what I would call unwavering support. So thank you, Margaret. And Margaret managed to corral the ATSI board and make sure the people she reports to got it, and we've had constant support from the ATSI board, represented here today by Professor Peter Gray, the president of ATSI. So thank you to the ATSI board. It wouldn't have been possible without funding, and of particular note, our initial funding came from a spur-of-the-moment decision, or the spur-of-the-moment, an instant decision by the then director of the Department of Education to fund the pilot actually what's called the Proof of Concept program, and that was Peter Dawkins, who is the Vice-Chancellor of Victoria University. He left from the department to become this Vice-Chancellor, so it's sort of appropriate that the 500th school is here. And that decision was made in conjunction with his General Manager, Tony Cook, who's now serving, I think, as the acting head of the Federal Department of Education. The rest of our seed funding for that proof of concept came from the generosity of ATSI fellows who dug into their pocket to support this program, which was wonderful to see. Then we actually got the year later, we got a huge boost from Julia Gillard when she was the Minister for Education. It was lucky, I think Peter and I went, it was about 2 weeks before the end of June of a particular year, and they had money that they hadn't spent. And they thought, what better to spend it on? And it was a substantial amount than the ATSI program of STELR. But then, of course, we've had the wonderful support from Orica, the linchpin of our industry support. So, Kirsten, thank you so much for your kind words, but for the ongoing support of your company for this program. It's been absolutely key to what we've done. I think the Australian Power Institute is here today. Mike, thank you, because you've been in there from the very beginning as well, and the constancy of your support has been not only of financial significance, but a morale booster for Peter on his worst days. And STELR Education, which is a company that has been providing the cloud-based technology that it enables, is in the process of enabling STELR to go from more of a written workbook to a online, interactive, deeply engaged technological delivery.